organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can make sure that we are seeking federal assistance for the Olympics more broadly, but also federal assistance for the recovery efforts, and how we can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale, we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale with efficiency like the executive order I talked about, time value of delivering projects, addressing building codes, addressing permitting issues, and moving forward to rebuilding and being more resilient.
What a joke he is. He just did like a minute and a half without saying a single damn thing. He's asked, what is that Marshall Plan 2.0? And he proceeds to babble about synergy. We're talking to local leaders and civic leaders and philanthropic leaders about spending in the giant scale, but also on the particularly small scale. And then he starts doing like mime in a box. Like, the hand motions are not a substitute for policy, my dude. That's a lot of hand motions. As a guy who talks with his hands a little bit, let me just tell you, that is some wild hand motioning.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if you just scrub through that tape once again and watch
he's a politician. He's
mechanics, that dude goes
sociopath.
Back to jazz hands.
He's literally a sociopath.
In middle school theater, he is just going for it. Wow,
and no one
that's
wants to see one.
Motions. He really went through the full band of play. Kind of impressed. I'll be honest with you. I thought he was going to run out, and then he would pull a new one. He'd be like, over here, and pulling it down from, and then all the way from here, and out here. And he is so awful. But he knows one thing, and that's Donald Trump is the problem. That's the biggest thing, of course.
Mr. Trump has threatened to withhold aid for California wildfires, both as president and now again as president-elect. You worried that he might actually do that?
Well, I mean, he's done it to Utah, he's done it in Michigan, did it in Puerto Rico. He did it to California back before I was even governor in 2018, until he found out folks in Orange County voted for him, and then he decided to give the money. So he's been at this for years and years and years. It transcends the states, including, by the way, Georgia. He's threatened similarly. So that's his style. And you know, we take it seriously to the extent that in the past it's taken a little bit more time. I've been pretty expressive about that in the context of someone threatening our first responders in terms of supporting the immediacy of their needs.
So that's what you take it as. President-elect Trump is threatening the first responders here.
Well, I mean, that's what he said. He said, I'm not going to support the firefighting efforts. I'm not going to support the state of California as it relates to its emergency management. He made this pretty clear during the election, unless they do my bidding.
Well, actually, what Senator John Barrasso said, Republican from Wyoming, correctly, is actually what we're going to do is we're going to attach some strings. Like, you actually have to clean up your forest if you want us to spend money on you, which makes some sense.
Do you expect, though, that Congress and Republicans will still help these Americans in need, even if they don't like their local politics in the party?
I expect that there will be strings attached to money that is ultimately approved, and it has to do with being ready the next time, because this was a gross failure this time.
It is amazing that Gavin Newsom continues to try to pretend that he is somehow the responsible player in all of this. He's now turned into the online meme. We're all looking for the guy who did this. Who could it be? Oh, man. Or the Who Shot Hannibal meme. It really is. He's a living meme. Gavin Newsom. Well done, California. You guys have done yourselves proud with the people that you've elected. Meanwhile, President Trump's administration is preparing for its unveiling. That, of course, is going to begin next week. But we are going to get nominee hearings that begin this week because Congress has already been sworn in. That means it's time to have hearings for SecDef prospective Pete Hegseth, Rubio, Secretary of State. And one of the things that you're starting to see is that many of the Trump cabinet members are now starting to say things that are in the realm of the more reasonable. Why? Because it turns out that the advice and consent process and the various constraints of American government tend to wash out most of the radicalism present from the right. Then didn't work on the left, just let them staff up in the administrative bureaucracy. When it comes to some of the kind of wackier opinions held by a wide variety of members of sort of the Team Trump, these things are being moderated, which makes perfect political sense. So, for example, Tulsi Gabbard, who's been tapped to lead the U.S. intelligence community as Director of National Intelligence, had opposed originally Section 702 Foreign Surveillance Authorities as a member of Congress that allows for metadata gathering and data gathering about foreign parties. And now she's reversed herself, and she's going to support that. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made more noises about the kinds of things that he would. He said he'll give advisory opinions rather than issuing outright bans. Pete Hegseth has been avoiding some of the more controversial statements that he's made in the past, for example. And so it's not particularly shocking to watch all this happening. This is how government works. So, for example, again, Gabbard told Punchbowl News on Friday she now supports Section 702 surveillance programs thanks to updated whistleblower and civil liberty protections. Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma had said that if she reverses that, there's a good shot she gets confirmed. RFK Jr. told reporters on Capitol Hill last month, "I'm all for the polio vaccine." And he said that he actually will pursue anti-abortion policies at HHS despite being pro-choice himself. Hegseth has said that he supports all women serving in our military today, including in combat roles. And again, this is because so many of the Trump cabinet members want to work with President Trump. Trump's agenda is going to be the thing that actually rules the rooster. It's something Susie Wiles made absolutely clear, and that's good. The same thing holds true, by the way, of Tom Homan, the out-of-central casting bloodhound who's going to track down illegal immigrants and deport them. So he is now the realist in the room, according to the Wall Street Journal. Homan has spent the weeks following the election right-sizing Trump's sweeping campaign promise to arrest and deport millions of immigrants living in the country illegally. In private transition meetings and occasionally in public, he has emphasized that immigrants with criminal records should be the primary targets for arrest, a narrower set of people than the 15 to 20 million Trump pledged to go after. Homan also said the administration would not carry out intimidating sweeps of immigrant neighborhoods, and that he's unsure how extensive the actual deportation campaign will be. He said, "I keep getting asked the question, how many people are we going to remove in the first 100 days? I don't know. I don't know what the resources are that I'm going to have. Congress is going to have to give me funding." Homan says, "I've worked for 6 different presidents. I've seen hundreds of policies come and go. I've seen what policies worked and what policies don't." Well, yes. Now, all the people who are set to be disappointed by the fact that the Trump administration actually has to operate in the real world. Get ready. The Trump administration actually has to operate in the real world. And there's no reason to be disappointed about that. That's what happens when you win. When you win, it turns out that many of these sort of outlandish things that you say are not applicable in real life. So there's bound to be some disappointments. And I, for one, am pleased with the realism because I would prefer that things get done even if it's 70% of the pie that I want. This happens to hold true with regard to, for example, the January 6th arrestees. So J.D. Vance, the Vice President-elect of the United States, he was asked on Fox News Sunday about who President Trump would pardon day one with regard to January 6th. And he said the reasonable thing, which is people who are guilty of non-violent offenses will be pardoned. People who did violent things against cops should not be pardoned. I know there are a lot of people online who are very angry about J.D. Vance saying that. I don't know why. If you assaulted a cop, it seems to me you should go to jail for whatever reason you assaulted the cop. Here's J.D. Vance saying, what is the rational and reasonable thing?
January 6th pardons, President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for a pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are a lot of people, we think, in the wake of January the 6th who were prosecuted unfairly. We need to rectify that.
Okay, so again, what he's saying there is perfectly reasonable and rational. And there are people online who are, of course, going nuts. Everybody should be removed. They're all political detainees. I mean, some are, and some assaulted cops. And that's not quite the same thing. By the way, J.D. Vance saying the same thing with regard to Greenland. So he's asked, Donald Trump has said that he's not going to rule out military intervention. And J.D.'s like, what are you talking about? Here's J.D. Vance talking about Greenland. Again, this is what rational politics looks like if you have a high IQ, which J.D. obviously does.
What's the deal with Greenland and the Panama Canal? Are we using or considering use of military force in any of those situations?
No, we will have to use military force. And the thing that people always ignore is we already have troops in Greenland. Greenland is really important for America strategically. It has a lot of great natural resources. My friend Donald Trump Jr. was there a couple of days ago, and they told him they want to be empowered to develop. The people of Greenland want to be empowered to develop the resources there. We also need to make sure that Greenland is properly cared for from an American security perspective. And frankly, the current leadership of the Danish government has not done a good enough job of securing Greenland. I think there actually is a real opportunity here for us to take leadership to protect America's security, to ensure that those incredible natural resources are developed. And that's what Donald Trump is good at. He's good at making deals, and I think there's a deal to be made in Greenland.
And so again, all this is perfectly rational and perfectly reasonable, and that's true across the board in terms of how Donald Trump is approaching policy. So, for example, last week, the incoming Trump team said, Donald Trump may not get a deal done in Ukraine day one. It's going to get done in the first few months. There are going to be talks. It's going to be reasonable. That's right. Mike Waltz is the incoming NSA, congressman from Florida. He says, listen, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, they're going to have a talk.
Will the first meeting with Putin be just Trump and Putin, or will this be trying to bring in Ukraine as well, Zelensky, Putin, and Trump?
Well, we haven't set the exact framework for it yet. We're working on that, but I do expect a call for at least in the coming days and weeks. So that would be a step. We'll take it from there.
Waltz also continued by saying, listen, it's not realistic to say that we're going to be able to expel every Russian from Ukraine as well. This has been true forever. The Biden administration acknowledges as much. It's just they refuse to actually create policy around reality.
Everybody knows that this has to end somehow diplomatically. I just don't think it's realistic to say we're going to expel every Russian from every inch of Ukrainian soil, even Crimea. President Trump has acknowledged that reality, and I think it's been a huge step forward that the entire world is acknowledging that reality.
Alrighty, so again, all of this is rational and reasonable, and that's what Trump 2.0 is going to be. There are going to be a lot of moments where members of the Trump base are unhappy with the kind of deal Trump is cutting. Why? Because he's the actual president now, and he has to get things done. It turns out getting things done means involving yourself in negotiations where you don't get 100% of everything, but you get most of what you want. There's going to be a lot of that in Trump 2.0 with an incredibly slim House majority and an incredibly slim Senate majority as well. Okay, meanwhile, we here at the Daily Wire, we have now announced and brought out a brand new documentary called Identity Crisis, all about the transgender movement, particularly directed at children. Well, joining online is one of the people featured in the film Identity Crisis, Adam Vina, who lost custody of his son after he refused to affirm the child's quote-unquote transgender identity. Adam, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be speaking.
So why don't we start from the beginning of your story? How did things come to this point?
It started when Abe was 2 years old. Is when I first received a picture of Abe and an address. And I sent out some text messages basically saying he's a boy, not a girl. And I had thought it had stopped at that point. And on Abe's third birthday, we were potty training Abe at the time, and he asked if he could use the restroom. I said, absolutely, buddy. Do you need help? Or do you want to do it by yourself? He said, I want to do it by myself. He went by himself. He came back out to me and he said, Daddy, Mommy bought me a pink dress. And the way I tell you and everybody else, I got down on one knee. I looked him in the eye. I said, hey, buddy, you're a boy, not a girl. And boys don't wear dresses. And he said, okay, Daddy. And at that point, I sent out another group of text messages. And in those groups of text messages, none of them were threatening of violence or anything like that to her or him. But they were able to get a temporary restraining order put on me. So I have technically been on a temporary restraining order for almost 5 years for no violence, no neglect to either my son's mother or to her. The judges in California ordered a gender assessment to be done on my son, which I have been. Mr. Shapiro, this whole thing has been extremely one-sided. Not at one time has the court system, the attorneys ever took the father into consideration into this situation. They always took her side. So I wanted to sit in on the gender assessment at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and they denied me that. I hired my own therapist to sit in on the assessment, and they denied me that. And I wanted to have a phone call with the doctor, and they denied me a phone call. So the doctor has never called the father to ask his side of what he thinks is going on with his son.
So let's talk about what's going on with your son. I mean, obviously you're spending a lot of time with your son, but by the same token, did you ever see any signs that your son absolutely thought he was a girl or anything like that?
No, sir. I asked Aiden's grandparents every single day that I missed something in Aiden. Was there an inkling that he wanted to be a girl? And there was never any inkling that my son Aiden wanted to be a girl. He was just your normal, typical little boy. Wanted to play with trucks, play in the dirt, your normal little boy thing. So there was never anything that he wanted to be this way.
So what do you think happened with his mother? I mean, why did all of this begin?
I think he started wanting to get back at me because we were no longer together at this point. But I truly believe that the judges, her attorney, the therapist, the children's hospitals, doctors, I really truly believe that they brainwashed my son's mother to be 100% on board with this whole transition. It wasn't just until recently in court where she actually started referring to him as Luna. Aiden now has her pronouns. I received an email from a parent from school that she sent to school saying that Aiden is now full transgender at 4 years old. He goes by she, her pronouns. He goes by the name of Violet. 2 years ago it was Violet. Now it's Luna. So as we all know, there's a transgender book out there for kids that the main character name is Luna. And a lot of these kids are taking that name up because they're referencing that book to what's going on with them. So my son goes by Luna as of right now.
So is there still a restraining order in place? What is the current legal status?
Currently legal status under the appeals process right now, waiting to get an appeals hearing. But if this goes all the way through to the end,